The following podcast contains spoilers and adult language. And wait, what's that coming through the air? Is that a walker?
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. Evil is coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And this week we're going to be discussing episode 2 of the second season of Walking Dead, Dead City. Title of the episode is Another Shitty Lesson. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So last week you went first with your sort of quick off-the-cuff thoughts, and it's my turn to go first.
I really want to hear what Diana's quick thoughts are.
Well, I don't think we've ever had an instance of an episode where how you felt about it was in the title. So, kudos for being like super right on the nose there, Walking Dead. Before we started recording, Steve and I were talking a little bit about the episode, and I would just come down to say that I think that this overall was disappointing in a lot of factors, but they do still sit like right on the razor's edge of opportunity. They're right in the middle. They've still got opportunity. They have some interesting new characters, and although it's not necessarily a new location since they were in Manhattan last season, the prospect of the possibility of, the Central Park and things like that. Like, those are interesting locales, interesting new people with these tribes that are out there. So those are interesting. Those have potential for being interesting. So, it's not like the season is lost. And we also agree that at its worst, Fear the Walking Dead was unwatchable. And at this era, this sort of instance of Dead City, they are exhibiting fear qualities, but they haven't quite fallen all the way down the hole yet. There were, character motivations and situations. None of it made sense. None of it worked together. I will at least say this, as we were saying before we started, that, methods probably were poorly conceived, poorly executed for this episode, but the motivation is there. It makes sense that New Babylon would want a source for gasoline, of fuel. That makes sense in this day and age, so that follows through. And for their motivation to get there, to do this mission, to do what, you know what I mean? Like, that at least is sitting on something that is, true. Some of Maggie's scenes with Ginny and her scenes with Herschel, like, those come from like a place of truth. Are they great? Not great, is the motivations are there for her to be a good mom and blah, blah, blah. But are they executed in the best way? I don't know. So far, it's not fantastic, but like I said, there's still room to improve. I rate this episode slightly higher than last week, only because I felt like there was some really interesting action that sort of moved the story forward. Regardless of the ridiculousness of why they were there and how they were putting together the action that happened, some of the elements of the action were still very interesting, and there were some surprising sort of character development moments, which we'll get to in our points. So overall, I'd say a little bit better than last week, not by much. Still, overall, I would call it's an okay episode. It wasn't great, but it's not the worst we've seen. So how about you? What did you think of Another Shitty Lesson? It's just funny to say the title, sorry.
Yeah, there were definitely alarm bells going off for me when I
Uh-huh.
watched this episode. Yeah, there was a lot of bad writing in this episode. And I almost think that the title of this episode should have been another shirty episode because that's kind of what it was. I mean,
Agreed.
there, uh, yeah, I mean, there was just so many fails in not just the storytelling, but I mean, the new characters are all cardboard cutouts.
Mm,
That and then they're good actors, but I mean it's just like ugh, they're stereotypical cutouts where they just I'm the the mean person in charge who's not going to listen to anyone, and I'm just going to walk around and do my thing,
right.
or whatever. I mean it just but then there just was just I mean oh my God, I mean we'll get into it, but I'm like really and
Hmm.
there was fun stuff with the like the Walker cannons and stuff, but I mean come on, those were ridiculous. So which again we'll go in a little bit more detail when we get into our points, but it I just I think it's really tough to watch this show with The Last of Us on at the same time.
Right.
And we're gonna be watching that, and it's really hard to not compare the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because it's just normal because you're like, well, they're very similar, right? They kind of have the same setup. They kind of are about the same thing. The Last of Us is like an imitation of The Walking Dead, which is an imitation of the Romero universe,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just you can't you really have to watch this in a vacuum and approach it with there is no other show on right now that is similar in style and setup, and you just kind of look for the cool things in this show without comparing it to the other show that is an incredibly well made show,
Right. Of
and
course.
that we're obviously a lot of us are very excited about, and then you're trying to watch this one too, and you're like it's not as good as the other one and so on,
Yeah.
but yeah, I definitely had some fear vibes. Definitely had some of that kind of PTSD stuff that I thought I had gotten over. you
Yes.
know,
We're
I
like,
kept
not this again.
I like went back and looked at the writer just to make sure it was not the knuckleheads because there were a lot of knucklehead things in this episode.
Oh
So
man.
yeah, I'm not giving up on it. I like it, like
Right.
you said. I think the central theme, like the central idea of the plot of why they're there is a good one and a realistic one, and it just we got to see what they're gonna do, and they've got what 6 more episodes to tell their story,
Right.
so let's see what happens.
Yeah. At least that's the bonus. Is last season, I'm sorry, it was actually almost like 2 years ago. They only
Hmm.
had 6 episodes to sort of, lay everything out there. And then in this one they have 8. So they sloughed off those extra 2 last week and this week. So now if it could just be good from here on out, that'd be
Yeah,
great.
that's
And
right. That
and we did say last week when we were talking about the comparisons with Last of Us, which it's their own fault. They put it on the same day. They put it in the same time.
right.
You're gonna get the comparison. You're gonna get, the quality comparison. And last week, I made the mistake of watching Last of Us first. And this
Hmm.
week, I was smart. And I was like, okay, I want to approach this with no preconceived, whatever about it. I want it to be, empty brain, empty head, empty, just receive the show as it comes in and not be comparing it to something else that I've already watched. And I think that helped. I was more engaged with it, at least. I wasn't enjoying everything that I was watching, but I feel like I was like last week I was just like, oh God, this is just so like not what I want to be watching and blah, 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 and I was all mad at it and whatever. But this week I wasn't feeling like that, but I was engaged with it and paying attention. and just not liking what I saw. Which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And like you said, there is room to move, room to grow, as it were. So now that we've told you that we hated it, I guess we're done. We'll just do feedback and wrap up. We don't
Hated it.
Hated it. That's not how we roll, people.
Oh no, we're going to go through in excruciating detail every little thing about it that we're like, and this sucked, and this sucked, and this sucked.
We got 20 individual points to tell you that totally blew chunks. Anyway, before we get into those individual points, let's first talk the writer and director, and before we get into that, let's get into our very scant episode description. And that's all you, Steve.
Wait. Another scant episode description? Oh,
Surely
wow.
I jest.
Yes, don't call me Shirley.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, let's see. This week's episode is being brought to you by...
They're everywhere. Maggie Reed, would you please comb your hair? And the dead, there's a lot in New York. Let 'em go. They'll come back to eat you. The Goobo soon will be sinking into the bay. The Goobo with exploding walkers to light our way. Set a course for Manhattan to land the exploratory force. And dead can't bite anymore. It's an open mouth on a hostile shore. It's dead. Welcome aboard. It's dead. City.
I mean, really, if that doesn't get you in the mood to, like, go on a New York cruise, I don't know what will.
I've never been pro cruise, but maybe I would be if you were singing that theme song as I came in. I don't know. Maybe it would do the opposite and make me want to throw myself overboard. I don't know.
See, I think they really missed an opportunity in the episode. They should have had, like, the guy, wearing the red jacket, and he could have been Isaac, your bartender, and he could have given you the finger gun, hey, yeah,
But he would have just blown up along with the rest of them. So,
I know, along with everybody else.
Which is a shame.
Yeah, it's too bad. It's. All right, so our episode description that we have, and again, this is episode 2.2 of Dead City, and the title is Another Shirty Lesson.
Okay.
And the description we have is, Maggie begins a treacherous journey back to the island. Negan reluctantly joins the fight. And that is all we get for our episode description.
Yep. Those are two things that happened in the episode, as you usually
Somewhat.
say. To a degree. To a limited extent, let's say.
Yes.
So, again, before we start talking hits, I meant points, and I don't know why I said hits. I put two words together in my brain. I think I looked at the word lit and saw whatever. Anyway, we're going to talk our moments, our top 10 individual moments. But before we do that, let's talk writer and director of the episode.
Yeah. Okay. Well, our director this week is the same director as last week, and that's Mr. Satrazemis yet again.
How dare he?
So he gets the first two in a row. We'll have to see if he's back for number 3 next week, or if they bring in someone else. And our writer is a gal named Zoe Vitale or Vital. I'm not sure how you pronounce her last name. And she is a producer of Dead City. And
Oh.
I thought I saw in the credits that she was also a script editor, but when I went and looked her up on the interwebs, it does not, she does not have that credit attached to her. So I don't know, maybe I must have been my medication was not kicking in or something. But she actually started out, she was a post-production assistant on World Beyond.
Oh, okay.
That's where she got her start in the Walking Dead universe. So she's been with the program for several years now and has worked her way up to being a producer. And for this week, anyway, she got the writing duties as well. So that is your writer and your director.
You said duty.
Duty.
So our our sort of cold open is the New Babylon people sort of gathering their troops to get ready from their sort of launch location.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so happy because the very, very, very first image of the episode was a really cool ghoul. And it
A
was
cool goal.
a cool ghoul. And it was just a skull, and inside the skull was a bird's nest, and there were little eggs in there too. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
it was two things. It was visually, I thought it looked really cool. We've seen instances in the last couple of spin-off shows where they've tried different creature effects and trying to stretch the bounds, especially when you look at the age, like the aging of the ghouls and how they would start to get reintegrated into nature and the things around them and stuff like that. And I like seeing stuff like this where they're sort of thinking outside the box on something like that. And I just thought it was a really cool image. And I was like, that's really cool. And it panned the camera, and these jeeps came in to their like little, I guess you could call it like their gathering location, sort of their before they, their pre location before they do their invasion, and like a little encampment. And the jeeps they looked not brand new, but they certainly didn't look like they'd been through the apocalypse for. I mean, at this,
They sure looked like they just came off the showroom floor.
I mean, we have to do the age of the show just like we used to on the main series by using Judith. We have to use Herschel. So she got pregnant with Herschel a year and a half in, probably. I think the stuff started about a year and a half into the show, like the timeline, give or take, right? So figure we're less than years apocalypse, and Herschel's probably what, 14, maybe 15.
He's got to be, yeah.
Yeah. So we're more than 15 years into the apocalypse, and the jeeps and their tires don't look brand new, but they look like they rolled off a really good pre-owned car lot somewhere.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
did they?
Oh boy, did
Yes.
they. And I have no problem with people having running vehicles in the apocalypse. It would happen. You would have mechanics, even hobbyist mechanics, learning how to put stuff back together again, but I would respect it more if it looked like it was jeeps that were cobbled together from many jeeps. And you could have 30 of them. I don't care. But they've got to
Mhm.
look like they follow the timeline of, you do not have access to 20 pristine vehicles. Maybe you have one that you were lucky enough to find that's all the same color, but it's those things, those choices that make a difference. You want the look of 15 years into the apocalypse
Right.
minimum. and
Right. Right.
and those didn't do it. Maggie jumps down from the truck, and she's got practically brand new soles on her shoes. And then the other thing that was incredulous to me is you realize that they took the time and the effort. All of these, I'm using air quotes here, soldiers, Everybody's got some kind of jacket or whatever that has like a leather patch on it that must be connected to New Babylon and is like putting them all together into this like troupe. But who, like, I don't understand. Like, are we back to it gave real bad Ginny vibes with the outfits and the hats, and I was really like, this can't, do not go down the Ginny path. Please. Next thing you know, they're gonna have a little key like pinned to their outfit or whatever. So I just it was difficult because it was like that very first image of the bird nest was really beautiful and I really enjoyed it, and then it's like 3 seconds later it all fell apart, and then I was like, oh man, credits.
Yeah, right. You're like, no. Oh.
Yeah, oh damn it. So that's how it started out to me. And then we come back from the credits and we get this really interesting at points. We get the Negan scene where he's back in his cell. And he's petulant Negan. He's, I didn't like being a bad boy. I feel dirty because I was a bad boy. I'm feeling regret because I did bad things. And, you know, and his violin pal, Violin Victor, which, could you have given him a different name? He plays the violin. You named him Victor.
Victor? Sure. I mean, why not?
Why don't we just call him Craig, please? Or
look,
like
he's cardboard cutout number 1. Just go with that.
And it's a shame because he seems okay. If he'd been given time to be fleshed out a little more, you know, I just don't. I like the story. It's fine. But he sort of tells it unprompted. And that's always the thing that kills you. Is it's not that the story is implausible. It's him unprompted telling this story that's implausible. I'm just going to tell you this really affecting story that might, you know, connect with what you're feeling right now, even though I don't know what you're feeling right now. And the story is now going to telegraph to the audience, oh, Negan feels this way because this is what the writers are telling us we should connect with, is this whole like, I don't like what's happening right now, but I need to find the silver lining to it, I guess. I don't know. What did you think of, I mean, you already think Victor's a cardboard cutout, but what did you think of the story and him talking to Negan like that?
It was like the first of many of these like parables that various characters decide to expound, which, you know, it's like they're telling their story, but clearly like the theme of the story can be applied to either Negan or Maggie or the universe in general.
Right.
And you're right. It's like, you know, like, hi, I'm your prison guard, and, you know, I like sat outside the cell with you for like a month, so we're like really besties now. What? You know?
Yeah.
So I'm going to tell you this story. And the other thing that really hit me is as soon as he sat down and started talking, I'm just like, oh, you are so dead. Dead man talking. I mean, it was so obvious that like it's because they're trying to flesh him out and make him somebody.
Right.
You know, and now that he's somebody that Negan kind of likes.
Yeah.
It's just.
Oh no.
Go ahead.
Finish your. No. I'm sorry, I interrupted. You finish your thought. I'll get to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, the whole idea of, you know, he kind of is pointing out, oh, you know, my dad forced me to play the violin when I was a kid, and oh, it's terrible. And so I had to like find something that would get me through it. And, you know, I finally found Bach, and he's just the greatest. And, you know, I mean, it's like hitting us in the forehead with a shovel with, you know, like, gee, Negan, you're being forced to do something you clearly don't like to do, but you know what? They're going to make you do it. So you might as well try and find something in there that you can hold on to that'll get you through it.
Right.
You know, and again, I just, as soon as that guy sat down and started talking, I'm just like, well, it's like, I hope that actor said goodbye to everybody because this was his last week on the set.
You know what's funny? I didn't read it as he was going to die right away, but I was like, well, clearly Victor's going to figure some way in this episode. and I honestly thought, and I was curious if it would happen this way, even all the way up until them bringing him in to that sort of like church location where they were. I was wondering if they were going to have him turn on Negan, like you can't trust anyone kind of thing. I was expecting him to maybe betray Negan in some way. And when he came in like that at the end, I was like, oh, this is going to happen. They're going to have him be like, I'm going to move ahead in this organization because I, betray Negan in some way and make him look like shit or whatever. And it didn't happen the way I thought it would, but exactly the same way. It's a cardboard cutout being propped up to be used for a plot device purpose rather than flesh out the character and make the character, a touchstone in any way. You can easily do that by changing a handful of those lines. Things like, I know I've only been sitting out here a month, but you've always enjoyed listening to the music, and I know you're going through a hard time. Do you want me to play the music? Because if not, I've got this great story that might make you feel better. You know what I mean? Like without like smashing it over your head, but you know what I mean? Like connect to it more, explain their relationship more. We only got that one little scene in the last episode where he takes out the violin and he plays like 2 notes and then has to like put it away hurriedly. But if they showed more camaraderie there, more like, hey man, I'm feeling kind of up. Do you have something fun we can listen to today? I'd love to hear a more upbeat song today. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of things. You know what I mean? Like if they'd done like,
hey man, can you play some Brahms? Hey, fuck Brahms. Yeah. I hate Brahms.
Can I have some little Vivaldi, please? I
need a shot of Mozart, dude.
Yeah, oh, man, right into the vein. I think they could have spent 20 seconds in the last episode to connect them better, and then another 20 seconds in this episode, and maybe changing up some of the dialogue just slightly to give it some more texture, and that scene would have been believable. But if we don't have the establishment of them having any kind of relationship, it ends up in the end, Negan's reaction feels hollow. It doesn't feel earned because he didn't. What does he care? It's just some guy. He's,
But he played the violin.
I know. Which just have you ever had any connection with any production of 1776, the musical?
I've seen it, but
there's literally a song in it where he plays the violin, and I'm like, that's all I keep thinking about every time you're like, he plays the violin. I'm like, he plays the violin.
He plays the violin. Well, he does. He
does.
Right anyway. Up into the part where she slices his throat open. So
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, Victor's speech about Bach, it's supposed to make you feel a certain way, and I think it just does the opposite. It disconnects you from him even more and makes him look like a plot device. Especially since you get like the different levels. You get him there, then you get him getting the other story, then he gets the opposite. He gets the Negan parable, the one that Croat started and then they finished with the whatever. And then, so, it's supposed to be like, oh, this bonding moment. We're sharing shitty stories. And then, but it doesn't do that in that scene either. And then in the end, then it's, like I said, like Negan's reaction, his no, just doesn't feel earned, I don't know. I don't know. So let's see. So we've got the speech about the Bach. Then we get a scene with Negan going back to the Dama, and it's basically we talked about the painting a little bit. and she's talking about how the painting has this brutality in it and whatever. And she basically is, she wants their, she's not impressed by the Croats' plan for to combat the invasion that they know is happening. And so, the moral of the story is she wants them to wear more flair on their uniform is what she wants them to do.
That's right.
Right. But, and the Croat seems kind of like, okay, fine. She asks Negan what he thinks, and he's like, look, it works, but does it, it's like a punch, but it's not a death blow, is what he basically said. And so the Croat's like, oh, well, we'll get together. We'll put together something that's more spectacular for you, And you're like, okay, great. Well, what are they going to do? Set off fireworks to, like, make her happy? Let's make it sparkle.
Shimmer!
Make it shimmer. That's the wrong TV show. Shimmer is another show. So we get that scene, and you're like, okay, great. So not only do we need to kill, but and attack, but we need to do it with some kind of flair and, like, flamboyance. So
some pizzazz,
yes,
if you will.
Yes. The Dama would like some pizzazz in your, whatever it is you're planning. And
she wants like a triple shot of pizzazz.
Yeah. And they don't even say what it is they're doing. They just pontificate on it. And then we see the fruits of their, mental labor later on when we see what they're sort of putting together. And there was pizzazz, all right. Very, very pizzazzy, I would say. We sort of pivot from there back to the New Babylon people, and we get it is so ridiculous, We get the tire fire, which, first of all, Maggie's with all the people, and then she sees the smoke, and nobody else sees it. She's the only one. She's the only one.
That's right.
She and Ginny are the only ones that have the eyes that are able to see the smoke. And I'm like, really? Yeah. It's tires, so it's black, so it's really, really easy to spot. I live in the
almost as if it's a signal fire.
Right. Oh my God. I live in the country, and let me tell you, there's a big difference between we're burning some brush in our yard and there were some people last year that they burned a few, there was a couple, like a month or so ago, there was a dumping zone that's not far from here, and a few tires caught, and you could see it for miles, and I just don't understand how nobody else saw it. But then she's able to sneak away to go check on it. She gets called on it later, and they're like, oh, you deserted, and I'm like, that's why we had people following you. And I'm like, if they had people following her, why did they allow her to desert? Why did they allow her to go all the way? Because they didn't know she was going to check out that fire. Wouldn't those soldiers have just been like, oh, she's trying to get away, we need to grab her? But they didn't. Yeah. They just let her go.
Excuse me, you can't leave. You have to stay here. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was just none of that. And then, obviously Herschel shows up because he does, because why wouldn't he follow his mom? Because that's also the, drama horror trope of, I need you to stay behind, and you're like, okay, well, that person's following them.
Right.
No matter what. Yeah. And then when she gets back, there's this scene where there's this confrontation between her and the major, and it gets physical, and I don't disagree with the punch, but I just felt like, I don't know. What did you think about that whole scene? It just felt strange, the whole thing.
Well, first of all, in the tire fire scene, did you notice Glenn's camper?
I did notice that there was a camper there, but I didn't make a Glenn connection. But that's true. That's really true.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, although it's not Glenn. What was his name? It was the other guy, the guy with the moral compass.
Oh, Dale.
Dale, that's Dale's camper. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. But Glenn was very connected to it. Dale was one of the people he was closest to.
Yeah. But I mean, it was the same. It looked to me like it was the same, like model. camper. You know, it had
Right.
the you know, very very similar, and you know, obviously not the same one, but like another one just like it. And I thought, I wonder, that's got to be intentional because it was so prominently in the background,
Oh yeah.
you know, of the sequence. You know, as far as like the cover that they, you know, she throws, I liked it, but I think, you know, it would have been if I was doing it, she would have punched Navarez, and Navarez would have just gone down in a heap,
Right.
and you know, and be like knocked out cold. You know,
Right.
I mean, you know, we need to establish that Maggie is the badass here, right? And I know it's one of the points you have coming up, that like she's like the experienced person that knows stuff, and you should be listening to her advice. And of course no one does, right?
Right.
But this would just be another way to prove it, that like, you know what, yeah, she took out, you know, the so-called, you know, person in charge with one punch.
Right.
You know, that's what I would have done. But I mean, you know, like the whole thing about, you know, desertion and all that stuff. I'm like, you know, you guys like picked these people up like yesterday.
Right.
You know, they've had no training at all in your army, right? And so and yet you're imposing all these military rules that, you know, they might not know
Right.
what all those things are, and you know what I mean. And you know, I mean, obviously they brought uniforms and you know, the blue jackets and all that, because a lot of the soldiers all kind of had them on in some degree, so they're
Right.
all, you know, they're all like uniform and so on. But yeah, it's like, hey, you know, we're conscripting people into the army and we're going on an invasion tomorrow. You know, it's like, no, that's not what happens. He's like, you conscript people and then they go off to basic training for like 6 weeks
Yeah.
minimum,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
know, where they learn how to be a team and they learn how to work together, and they learn that, you know, when the officers say, hey, go charge at that machine gun nest, you do it. You know, I mean, it's it's just, I get it. They don't have time. You know, you know, the show doesn't have time to wait, but it's just like, you know, no military commander in their right mind would be like, sure, let's do that. Let's just go around from town to town, scoop up, you know, 20 people here, 10 people here, 5 people here, whatever, throw them all together so they really don't know them at all. They have no cohesion, they have no chemistry, they have not worked together, they have, you know, none of that. And then we're going to do an amphibious operation with them. Yeah, it's a good plan,
It's
you know.
it that has success written all over it. I mean, according to
Oh yeah,
that's how I feel. Yeah.
yeah. So you know, I mean, it was just the beginning of a lot of like what I, you know, would I guess have to term knucklehead writing going on in this episode.
Yes.
And it also, I really like the actor who plays Navarez.
Okay.
But I mean, that character is the worst. I mean, literally, she is a caricature.
Yes.
I mean,
They're not
she is
giving her
like
a lot.
oh, it's like every bad officer you've seen in any kind of a war movie. You know, the person who doesn't listen to anybody, thinks that everything that they do is correct, and, you know, barks out orders and expects everyone to jump as soon as they say. I mean, every cliche you can get, she's doing
Yeah.
with this character, and I'm just like, oh, please stop. You know.
Yeah, she's
So
the
yeah.
one. As soon as they brought Maggie back, the first she was like when Maggie poked her head in just to ask a question of
Mhm.
Pearlie, and she pokes her head in. She's like back to your quarters, soldier, and she
Oh
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
everything's a battle with her. You know,
Mhm.
it's just so
Yeah.
like it's all one note is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was not a fan of that scene, that whole sequence. I like the punch. I just think it should have been much more. We should have seen much more, you know, power out of it, and
Mhm.
that the girl should have just been out.
Yeah.
And you know,
No,
and
go
then,
ahead, go ahead.
Pearlie could be like, and Pearlie'd be like, you know what, you need to get out of here. I'll you know, try and smooth things over when she wakes up. You know.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. That was my reaction.
Yeah.
I right away, that was like the beginning of the
Yeah.
moments for me.
And I wrote down that, you know, you mentioned I had the comment there, but my thing is that I hate the trope when someone is acknowledged for their experience and their savvy, like they literally like Pearlie talked them into taking her over 20 other people. And she proved it in that little match. So she's obviously savvy. She knows what she's doing. And she's been there and she knows the island. She fought with the Croat. She knows what she's doing. And then she goes to give advice and she's treated like a dumbass. You know, she's not saying stop what you're doing. Like when before she went to go find the that's not true. Before she punched Navarez, she basically was like, listen, they know you're coming. They know what's happening. But she didn't tell them, you know, because they were like, we worked on this for months. And she's like, smaller group of people, exploratory mission, go at night, go on a raft, go whatever. You know what I mean? She's giving them ideas. She's not saying turn around and go back. She's saying you got to change what you're doing. They're going to see you coming a mile away. They already know you're here and that you're coming. This is, you know what I mean? And so for her to be brought along for her expertise and for everything she's saying to be discounted is so like, and I know they're trying to set up the moment where she saves Navarez's life or something down the road and she's changed and she becomes like a Maggie disciple or something, you know, or she, you know, begrudgingly becomes a Maggie disciple and ends up saving her life down the road or something, you know, they're setting up that same tropey thing, you know, for down the road while they're there on Manhattan. But all of this like cardboard cutout bullshit leading up to it is just making it, again, just like the Negan scene, it's unearned. You know, it's not, you know, you can't jump from a one note portrayal and it's not just her fault. It's like what's being written for her and just jumping right to this person with like layers and motivations and feelings and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how they make a transition into somebody, if they make a transition into somebody that we're supposed to have feelings for. Like right now, I don't hate her because she hasn't been written well enough yet. But I agree with you. I love Dasha Polanco. I think she's a great actress and she can do this stuff. And it's funny because they showcased her in the little featurette.
They did, yes. And she was having a ball.
She was, and she is so animated. And I mean, and she's usually more goofy and funny. And they were talking about how she makes people laugh and all this stuff. But then they show her scenes and she's just like, I have nothing else to say. These are the lines I've been given. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. But it's like you're wasting this person who has a lot of, color to her, and they're just misusing her talent on this. I hope she's one of the things I'm hoping for. Is I'm really hoping that they are able to tap into the Dasha Polanco that we know as an actress and be able to pull those colors out, like, on the page so that she can do what we know she can do, That'd be great. That'd be great. If you could do that, writers, that'd be great.
That'd be so super.
That'd be Marvy. Thanks.
Shimmer.
Yeah, Shimmer.
I mean, at least Maggie like voiced your concerns in the episode because when she first sticks her head in and there and again Nevers is like, hey, get back to your quarters or whatever, soldier. Yeah. And she's like, whoa, you guys brought me because I can help you. Because I've been all the things you said, she says, yeah. And yet they're still like, yeah, go away, and then it's literally it's like, why did you bring her then?
Yeah, then it's just a waste. It's a waste of resources. Yeah. Yeah. So but again, at least they had Maggie realize that and point out to them, what's the point, and I think she kind of pulls Pearlie aside and she said, look, as soon as you escaped, the Croat's been planning for you to come back. Yeah. Right. So and she said he's smart and he's paranoid, and Pearlie is like, well, I know. I'll talk to the governor and get her to change things up at the 11th hour. It's like, how is that going to help? Now that means you guys are going to be even more unorganized because you're doing things you hadn't thought you were going to do. It's funny. I was rewatching before we started recording, and in that scene when she tells him that, and she's just using logic. It's a logical place to go. Is they've been planning for this since you left, because they know New Babylon is a force, that they have some numbers behind them, and that they can create some chaos if they wanted to. And so she's like, it's not a big leap to make. It's not a huge leap, but she's like, he's been planning since you left. He's this person. He would do that. And the look on Pearlie's face is like, really? Do you think so? And I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
And he was they portrayed him in the first season as being this like Mr. I know everything. Like, I can anticipate anyone's moves because I can, I can get inside their head. And it's like, well, then why wouldn't he have thought about that thing about the Croat? Why would it would have made more sense if she said that and he's like, listen, I know that, but they don't believe me when I say those things.
Yeah.
And so we're doing the best we can, considering they would move ahead without me. So we chose Governor's Island, which is further north on Manhattan. They're not down near downtown. And it's up more, it's up near more like Harlem and Upper Side. I can't remember if it's Upper West Side or not. But anyway, so to approach from there, there's less tall buildings up in that area. So it's more residential, yada, yada. So like saying those things makes sense. Like, but if he had put it together with like, I understand and you understand that, but I can't explain it to them, they're like pig-headed and focused, but they didn't. They made him look dumb. They made him look inexperienced and dumb. And based on what we saw in the first season, he's not that guy. He is smarter. He does anticipate. He is a good tracker and a good, hunter, as it were. But they're making him look like a dum-dum because it suits the plot, So that's a shame. So.
Well, the other thing that I don't get is that, he's a colonel.
Yeah.
So he should be able to boss Nevers around.
Yeah, doesn't that outrank Major?
Oh, it does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The only thing higher than a colonel is the general Houseman, who, I counted Houseman he said one word in the 2 episodes he was in. And that was when the historian dude was throwing up. He goes, God. And it's like not even featured. He's in the background.
Yeah.
Right? That dude never opened his mouth the whole time he was there. And then he gets blown up. So he's most likely dead. Right. So, but yeah, I mean, clearly Birdie is, he's like, in terms of rank of the military, he's like number 2. Yeah. So he could tell, Navarez to have a big frosty glass of shut the fork up anytime, and she has to sit there and take it. But she don't act like that. She bosses him around.
I know, which is so weird. It doesn't make sense. That that makes no sense. More things that don't make sense. Fix it.
Fix it. Come on, writers, fix it.
All right, let's go. Let's move on to, we've got the scene on the roof where we see the Croat and Negan working on their new pizzazz plans. And Negan's like working on what turns out to be, he's like putting together a telescope to be able to watch what's happening. But it's more like a mariner's one, like so he can move like by degrees and whatever. Very cool. I didn't know he had that skill, but you do you. Fear the Walking Dead. Oh, I'm sorry. Walking Dead, Dead City. Sorry. I was confused for a second. So he's like building it from scratch, like you do on the night of the actual attack.
That's right, baby.
And you can see that they're putting together something. There's like these big sort of 50-gallon drum barrel-sized cannons, and they're pushing like the barrels in, and when I first saw that, I was like, oh, they're gonna like light these big barrels of fuel on fire and probably shoot them out or whatever, and I wasn't totally wrong. They're still kind of doing that, but just they're adding some more pizzazz to it, as it were. So the big part of that whole scene is we're supposed to see like sort of hints of things they're gonna do, but it's all about the story. And as you said, it's another parable to connect you with the characters, I guess. But the Croat starts the story, and he's telling it to, Violin Victor, who's, he's a few hours away from, meeting his ghastly end, as it were. Um, and he just said no.
Ex-violent Victor.
Yeah, ex-violent Victor. um, and you can tell at first Negan's like uncomfortable. He doesn't want to tell this story. And I know they're trying to paint Negan as the guy who's not comfortable being, you know, Negan, like the mythological Negan of before. He's not comfortable with doing that. And so, the Croat's telling this story. He knows where it's going, and he's not sure he wants to. Plus, it's like, this is my new friend, and Victor knows my emotional side, where he says Vivaldi's shit, but I prefer that music, and it makes me feel things I didn't know I felt. So,
and he gives me plates of cockroaches to eat.
Which, he would only do that if he loved me.
That's true.
It's this odd sort of thing, and Croat's trying to like show off like this hilarious story from the Sanctuary days, and it's interesting. It's basically it's supposed to show Negan as this guy who is brutal no matter what the odds are. So, the odds were kind of stacked against them with these people that had attacked them, that wanted half their stuff or whatever. And I'm like, half your stuff? Where have I heard that before? Negan, so derivative. And so, he's laying the groundwork for this story, and then he's like, oh, you tell the rest of it. So Negan finishes up the story, and basically they invite these people to a dinner. We'd love to enter a partnership, and you can take half our shit, and that's fine, and let's celebrate with a big dinner. And they fed all of these people walker meat, and they got really sick and died, apparently, I think is the way it worked.
Well, that was kind of the gist of it. Yeah, he said they were all puking their guts up, and then he says something like the Sanctuary's walker moat got a lot more crowded or something. So yeah. It was very, very much like Dune Prophecy, right?
Yeah.
Where the sister, poisons all the Atreides dudes, and they, are at the banquet, and they all, the next morning they're all dead.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Yeah. And the whole thing, it's like, it's this interesting play because like the Croat is like all excited for the story, literally jumping up and down and like slapping Negan on the shoulders and the back, telling the story. And Negan is like, he half-heartedly gets started telling the story. He's not really into it, but then he like, once he really gets to the punchline, he's almost kind of proud about it. And you can tell like Victor like doesn't know what to think. Am I supposed to be impressed by this? Am I supposed to be scared? So it's hard to read like where Victor is at in that moment. And it's an interesting enough story, but I'm like, why now? Why here? Why with Victor? And I'm like, oh yeah, we're setting him up for something. Something's gonna happen with Victor, and we just don't know it yet. I mean, you knew it, but I didn't quite see it yet. But poor Victor.
Well, it's kind of, it's sort of telegraphing the last scene where,
for sure,
where the Dama invites everybody in, and it's supposed to be this big celebration, and she kind of brings in Victor, and he gets to sit down and at the kind of with the big boys, and he plays his little violin, and then she says, I love that so great, but actually Bach was a turd, and I hated him because he didn't change anything, he didn't revolutionize anything, he just did what everybody else did really, really well, and that held us back, and I want to move forward. And then she stabs him, right? And it's it's kind of the same overall idea of what Negan did. You kind of lure in your enemy, you get him close to you, you get him to lower your guard, and then you take him out. And okay, again, as far as Walking Dead stories go, with Negan, I mean, it was kind of tame. I'm like, really?
Right.
Why, I'm expecting Negan to like, say like, and after they sat down at the table, I came out and like bashed the leader's brains in with Lucille, and then all my guys sprung out and killed everybody at the table, Steve Ogg was there, and he, cracked a couple skulls or whatever. I mean, they could have been much more brutal than, oh, shh, we fed him walker meat. Yeah, okay, So yeah,
Yeah.
again, it was a story, and they told it, but it didn't. It overall it didn't do that much for me.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and you're right. I mean, it is kind of laughable that like they're like literally like assembling the guns like as the boat is approaching.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? You guys had no defenses set up before like an hour ago?
Yeah, we weren't at least a little bit more prepared
Yeah,
than this,
right. You haven't test fired them. You haven't figured out what their range is, and you know what I mean. You're just like, no, it's gonna work.
We're gonna
Yeah,
wing it is what we're
yeah.
gonna do
That,
and
oh
hope
boy,
for the
do
best.
they?
Yeah. And so we see we see them coming across the bay,
Mhm.
and their overconfidence is just brimming, and as soon as they show the boat, like, the little ferry or whatever leaving the dock and moving towards Manhattan, and they're all lit up like that, I'm like, are you stupid? Like,
Mhm.
why do you have all your lights on?
Mhm.
And maybe the Croat won't see you, but someone's gonna see you. You are so visible, it's ridiculous. You are literally holding up a big old target saying, please shoot here.
Mhm.
Because in the dark, you shouldn't be able to see us, but oh boy, there we are. Very easy to spot. It was so stupid. Like, they should have done something else, and I don't know what that is, but that's why I don't write TV shows. Um, so, they've got Maggie and Herschel, like, handcuffed to poles down in
in the pool room.
yeah, where you keep poles for fun.
Well,
In
well, see that ferry was like a floating strip club ferry in the before time. So, there are a couple poles in the middle of the ship for no reason. So, yeah.
like you do. What? Yeah, absolutely. Unbelievable. Just, we're gonna attach them to a pole because they couldn't leave them behind. Like, they couldn't strap them to a pole where they were at the
Hmm.
encampment, but they had to bring them with them.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it.
It's kind of like the parents that go to the bar and bring the baby with them. Like, you couldn't let the baby at home, really?
Mm.
Yeah. So anyway, so she's there, and things start to fall apart upstairs. We show all these people out on the docks, and they're like, what's that coming up in the water? And it's, just buoys. And then they tap the buoy, and away it goes.
Hmm.
And it's really interesting. I liked the use of the buoy bombs because it was something that they could do that, like, if they weren't using like any kind of lights, like if they just were trying to creep through the water, the first one they hit, it's gonna light them up, and they'd be like, oh, there they are. So it was actually smart on Croat's part. Dumb for them to think that there wouldn't be, regardless of them attacking, wouldn't they have stuff in the water to stave off any attack from someone? Wouldn't they have something along those lines? Not necessarily bombs, maybe, but I don't know, like something with spikes in it that would pierce your boat, or what, wouldn't they have some kind of defense out in the water to keep people from getting to the island? Or is that just me?
No,
I
I
don't
mean
know.
they could. I think what you do is you actually just you make the landing areas. That's where you put your defenses,
Right.
right? Because the New York, the island of Manhattan, you can't just pull up anywhere. And,
Right.
and they even say like we're gonna land on Pier 25, and it's like, no, oh, you
No,
don't
you're
do
not.
that. But
Yeah.
but um but yeah, I mean, you can put obstacles, things that are
Yeah.
metal, big metal, pieces that you put right that they're under, you can't see them, they're under the water, but they're high enough up that if a boat comes over, they're going to rip the bottom of the boat out and,
Right.
damage them or sink them. You do that. You could do the mines like they did with the buoys. I mean, there's all kinds of defensive things you could do. But I
Right.
mean, why would you need to when the, the invasion guys are just going to come tooling over with all their lights on?
Yeah. Yeah, and I just it's irritating that they weren't prepared for something to be in the water. Like they're
Hmm.
looking out all over the place for an attack that's going to come at them, but they just weren't thinking that it would be in the water. How else are you going to get across? They don't have access to a helicopter.
Hmm.
This isn't the Civic Republic.
Not
um
yet.
Not yet. So I just but I liked the use of those bombs. I thought that they were interesting. I just thought it was strange that they weren't looking out for something in the water to be impeding their progress in any way. But anyway, so they have the bombs, but they also have these awesome cannons too. But what's great is, again, we get these parables, but we also get you included in your notes. There's this great line from the Croat just as we're about to see one of the explosions, and he tells this tale from his old chemistry teacher, and it's like a little verse. So, and you included it in your notes, so you should chat about that, including it and what you thought of it.
Yeah. Well, let me just say, I hated this scene. Everything about this scene was wrong and bad and poorly written. So, the Croat's little nursery rhyme notwithstanding, I wrote it down just because it was like the only interesting line in the whole episode. Other
Right.
than, I believe Negan did out the before time when he told the story of the feast. So I
Right.
appreciated that. I'm like, oh, they used the term the before time. I like that. But yeah, I mean everything about this. The floating mines. That's one thing. You could do those, I suppose. But I mean the ghoul cannons. They were really fun, but oh my God, they would never work at all, and not nearly as good as they worked for them. But yeah, the Croat, they're like loading the cannons up on the top of the building, and the Croat, says, I was doing something, and then I remembered something my chemistry teacher said, and he is telling Negan, which is weird because you'd think Negan already knows what it is, but he tells him anyway, and he says something like sodium and water. It's supposed to be like a nursery rhyme. He goes, sodium and water, what a fierce little pairing, strongly exothermic, they come together in a flaring. Electrons emitted, electrons transfer in the water, releasing heat and light. Hydrogen and sodium hydroxide. What a sight. Gaseous byproducts emitted in a plume, so be careful while you work, or else you'll end up with a. And then just as he says that, one of them like hits the boat and
Yep.
boom, and
Yeah.
blows up. And again, it was fun, it was nice and so on. But I mean, yeah, I hated this scene. I'm sorry. You know what? You do not, when you're, invading an enemy territory, you do not go driving over with all your lights on. And I understand the whole thing of, we're watching a TV show and you got to be able to see stuff, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I remember hearing all the stink about the Game of Thrones episode where it was a battle at night and a lot of the fans complained that they couldn't see anything. That was too
Right.
dark, right?
Right.
And I get it. I understand that, but there are ways you can shoot with light without, while still suggesting that it's dark, but it's obviously lighter than it would really be in real life, so you
Yeah.
can see stuff. But I mean,
Hello,
they're
moonlight.
yeah, but I mean they're like driving along and like they have like the lights of the boat on,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, again, whoever, the Zoe Vitale, it's like, did you like, could you use like Google like seaborne invasion and just read the like Google description on it? I mean, there's a term that they use. It's called blackout conditions,
Yeah.
right? Where when you're like transporting like your troops to invade somewhere like that, there's no light on the ship at all. And like
Right.
ships, like in World War II, naval and the merchant ships, they like actually had what was called a smoking light. And when the smoking light was out, you could not even smoke cigarettes on the deck because the glow from your cigarette could give away your position to
Right.
like a submarine or something that's out, you know what I mean? So yeah, I mean that drove me nuts, that whole bit where they're just like tooling along like it's a freaking tour, you
Yeah.
know, of New York Harbor. And then the other thing is that the major is the one that's steering the ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and like really, it's like you guys couldn't find anyone else that like I don't know maybe did that for a living and could do it, you know. But no, the major's doing it. And the second thing is they have absolutely no lookouts out at all. There's
Right.
nobody at the front of the ship going, hey, you know, there's some buoys approaching here. You know, I mean, that everyone's just kind of meandering around on the deck and whatnot. And
Yeah.
so that was incredibly bothersome. And then, you know, like I said, the cannons, you know, like I said, they're very cartoony, they're very comic booky, and in that idea, they were fun, and I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed them. And you know, clearly we're seeing that the New York guys are using the dead as in every way possible because it's like the only resource they have, really,
Right.
on New York. But you know, I'm sorry, a human body, if you shoot it like that through the air, it's gonna go flying through the air. It's not gonna go very straight, and
No.
it's gonna tumble, and its arms and legs are gonna be flailing. So it's not, you know, it's not gonna be aerodynamic at all. And so if you had like 50 of those guns and you fired all of them at once, yeah, you might get one or two that might come close and might hit the boat. But I mean, like every round they fired are direct hits on that ship. And I'm like, really? You know,
Yeah.
and even if they did hit the ship, I mean, you know, an artillery shell or a cannon shell like that, it's designed to inflict damage when it explodes, okay? And it creates
Right.
shrapnel and it, you know, does all that. You know, the human body, what, you know, other than maybe some of the bones, it's not really designed like that because, you know, they don't blow up normally. And so, I mean, you know, it'd be a very ineffectual weapon, I think is what I'm saying, is that, you know, if a body were to fly into your boat and blow up like that, you know, is there, you know, the shock wave is going to do some damage, but other than that, you know, I again, I hated this scene. I mean, I thought their plan was really stupid. I thought that the weapons that were used against them, while they were fantastic, they were completely impractical and would never really work in real life. And I know
Mm-hmm.
how silly that is to say that in a show about zombies, but you know, that's always been, you know, my thing where it's like, look, you have one completely unbelievable fantastic element in your universe, which is the dead or come back to life. Everything else should be as real as you can make it,
Right. Right.
you know. And I think that's where the two shows differ, in that The Last of Us, which again is after The Walking Dead came out, that's when they made it, so they had a chance to see The Walking Dead, and they went with something a little different. But clearly they're like telling a very true, real, gritty story,
Right.
right? And The Walking Dead at times looks like it's stuff out of a comic book because, you know, the source material is a comic book.
Right. Right.
You know, and when Bob Kirkman was writing the comic back in the before time, before the TV show, you know, since he didn't have moving pictures and stuff, he just had the still images. They had to do these kind of outlandish, over the top things to make it
Mm-hmm.
interesting, to get the people to want to read it. And that's why all the villains on The Walking Dead, they're all cartoony in one way or another, right?
Right.
You know, the governor, Negan, the Whisperers, like even like the wolves, not the Last of Us wolves, but the Walking Dead wolves, or like the Dibs guys, or the Terminus people. Or, I mean, they're all these kind of larger than life, like people. You know, you're like, yeah, you wouldn't really do that, you know. And some of the regular characters are too, like Michonne. We love Michonne, all right? You know, Michonne
Mm-hmm.
would never happen in real life if that were to happen. You're telling me you're going to have two decaying bodies around you at all times?
Right. Right.
No, you wouldn't. It looks cool. You'd never do it. You know, and I think this show is staying true to that kind of comic book lineage where they're doing things that are completely fantastic and would never work in real life. But again, because it's a comic book, they're doing it. And so I appreciated the idea of, hey, let's fill the ghouls up with the methane or whatever, and then let's
Right.
like tape their mouth shut and then put, I don't know, some kind of plaster on their
Yeah, I
face.
didn't understand what that was. I don't get
I
that.
didn't either. And then we're gonna put them in these massive cannons. They're gonna shoot them, and they're gonna go hurtling through the air, and they're gonna, now they're gonna be our like form of ammunition.
Yeah.
Again, super fun, never work in
Yeah.
real life. Never do it. So yeah,
Right.
I hated out just about everything in this scene. Absolutely. And the other thing too is that Negan's building that little site, and I mean that little thing was, I mean, the smallest telescope in the universe, yet when he looks through it, Maggie and Herschel are like an inch away. I mean, it is
Right.
like an extreme. I'm like, really? That little magnifier is going to see in the dark all the way into the bay and see them like getting off the I'm like, come on. That,
Yep.
that was, it was just so many things wrong with that sequence. That sequence, I literally, I'm like having fear flashbacks when I watched it. I mean, it was
Right.
that bad. So,
Right.
and that was supposed to be the set piece of the episode, and I was just like, oh. So
And
yeah.
there was the cannons didn't bother me as much as they bothered you, Mister. I just went on for 10 minutes about them,
Ugh.
but I know, but I recognize all of the stuff that was improbable about them, but I still found it in a cool and interesting. We've seen people use like trebuchets and flinging of bodies and heads and you name it
Mm-hmm.
in warfare. So we've seen that used before. We've seen that with using body parts and things like that. So it's not a new image to see, but the barrels were interesting. The giving them the filling them with the methane, that was interesting. Turning them into an actual bomb felt kind of interesting. I agree that they wouldn't have been able to be as exact as they
Oh.
were, but whatever. If it was, it was either that or they were going to have some kind of other cannon with cannonballs, and they would have been just as accurate, and it would have driven us nuts as well.
Well, well, I mean, but see, here's the thing though. Like, okay, this is, what did we say? Herschel's what, 14, 15 years old,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
that means the world ended at least 15 years ago. You know what? You can go out and find like real cannons that are just lying around, not being
Right.
used by anyone, because all the people that used them are dead. So,
Yep.
go get them. You know, they're, they're, the fourth George Romero zombie movie is called Land of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not a fan of Land of the Dead at all. That's one of the reasons why I haven't suggested we review it, because I don't particularly like it. And one of the reasons why is that, again, this is after the fall for a long time, and this little community, they have their own army that they've equipped, and they have like this like homemade like super tank that they drive around, and it's like two RVs put together. So it's really long, almost like a train kind of a thing. And it's like a complete custom armored vehicle they call the Dead Reckoning. And it's supposed to be like super cool. And you're like, wow, they got the Dead Reckoning. Look at that. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, why? Why would you spend all the resources to build some custom thing that if it breaks, how are you going to fix it? Because the parts are all not standardized at all, particularly when there are like real tanks everywhere. Just go get one of those. And that just bothers me to no end. It's like, you can get all of those heavy weapons because they're around. So yeah, again, bad writing, bad writing.
Yes. Bad writing.
Mm.
Yeah. So we know how it got there, but oh, Victor. Poor
Well,
Victor.
first, I just want to point out that like the historian, like the nebbish guy that
Oh yeah,
thinks he
yeah, yeah.
knows
That's
everything
right.
about New York.
Yeah.
Okay, his name, they gave his name finally, is Benjamin Pierce.
He
And I know
says it
for
in
like,
he said it in episode 1. He did say
Did he
it.
say it? Okay,
Yeah, but
I
it was
must
in a
have missed it. But
but it was in the midst of a bunch of other stuff, and you're like, who is this character? And you just didn't hear the name at first, but he does say it. But it's
right,
very, very obvious in this one.
yeah. But the whole point I'm making is that, and this is not gonna affect people that are like under the age of like 30. But Benjamin Pierce, that's Hawkeye from MASH.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it, it's like, and yet again, another unbelievably false cardboard cutout guy walking around. I know everything about New York because I read a pamphlet once. Let me tell
Yeah.
you. Oh God.
And he's wrong about it too, because he was like, it was the capital of the place before, and I'm like, no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. But anyway, yeah, it's I like the idea of his character being I guess captured and brought in, and now he'll be like
The historian for the Dama.
yeah, exactly, because it's everything that he wants. He's so excited about the idea of the bright lights in the big city. He's one of those, he'll do anything to be in that position and be able to write everything down. So it's going to be interesting to see him flourish under the Dama, because I think he'll dedicate his life and his himself to her moving forward. So that'll be interesting. Plus, he's going to be scared shitless because he watched her stab someone with a pen.
With his pen.
With his pen. She gave it back to him. Yeah. She's like, wipe, wipe,
she
wipe.
did. She sticks it back in his pocket. But he reminds me a lot of the Saul Rubinek character in Unforgiven.
Okay.
That's like writing the book with the Richard Harris character when Richard Harris comes into the town, and then Gene Hackman, Little Bill beats the snot out of Richard Harris and he leaves, and then that Saul Rubinek guy stays with Little Bill and he's writing everything down. He's like recording it all. I just, as soon as they introduced him, I'm like, well, that's who he is, and he's never gonna join the fight, never gonna pick up a gun. He's just gonna be there to kind of like record it all for whatever reason. So
of course, yeah. He'll commit it all to history, which will be interesting.
Right.
All right.
Wrong. Right. Incorrectly, most likely.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. That's right. He'll be wrong. So great. That's the future of the apocalypse. So poor Victor.
Poor Victor.
Hardly knew the. We've already talked about it a bunch, but clearly they bring him in. I thought at first that he was going to be brought in to betray Negan in some way. Just the entrance and the way they had him come in, and the way Negan was reacting and whatever. And then, then it became different, and I was like, oh, yeah, she's gonna kill him. And, and even Negan's reaction, whereas, like, he's got nothing to do with it. Punish me. I hesitated because there was a kid there, and I didn't want to, blah, 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 whatever. And he never says that it's Herschel. He just says that they're, and she doesn't listen. She just does her thing. And, so, Victor, he gone.
Well, and I mean, that's like the historian guy, his pen, it's like a fountain pen.
Yeah. Nice and sharp.
Like the kind that you like dip into like the thing with the ink. I mean, it's not like a Bic pen or anything, but yeah. Oh my God. She stabs him in the neck, and then she like slices his throat open like she has like a butcher knife. I mean, did you see how big that prosthetic slit throat was? I mean, it was huge. Yeah. I'm like, from a little pen that did all that damage.
Yep.
But it just this is a thing that drives me nuts in action movies, is when the leader of the bad guys will like kill off perfectly good soldiers for no reason. Right. It's like, what, why are you going to kill that guy? What did he really do to deserve to die? And I get it. You're supposed to know, look, you're supposed to come away going, wow, she's nuts. She's a
Yeah.
wackadoodle.
Yeah.
She's psycho. But at the same time, it's like, if you keep killing the guys that are in your group, eventually the rest of the guys in your group are going to leave.
Yeah. Or they're
'Cause
gonna
what
knock you over and they'll be in charge.
Yeah,
That's
I
all
mean,
it'll
it's
take.
yeah, it's just like, come on, no, there are other ways you could have punished Negan. I mean, they could have held out his hand and smashed it with a hammer.
Yeah.
This is what you get, all right? You screw up again if you hesitate and you let
Yeah.
people survive. This is what that would have been pretty effective, right?
Yeah.
And then
What
you still have a really good soldier in your employ.
what they should have done is they should have burned his face with an iron.
There you go.
Right. Learn from Negan.
And learn from Negan. Yeah, you use Negan's.
People are a resource.
Right. Yeah.
He
I
wasn't
mean,
wrong.
go find Dwight.
I hear he's available. He left his wife again.
Again, yeah. Well, she said, hey, we just got back together. I need some time on my own.
I need a little time, if I could, please. Terrible.
Oh, it's all coming back now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's try to not talk about fear. Don't talk about fear. Don't talk about fear. Don't talk about fear. All right, so we get the final sort of nail in the coffin. The final scene where we see after the boat explodes and they had to make their way to shore somehow. It shows the survivors sort of like gathering on the shore and trying to sort of regroup and figure out like what's the next move, and they're sort of sitting there and planning it out, and someone's got an injury on their leg, and Herschel's helping out, and he starts wrapping some fabric around it, and Maggie's sort of watching with like half a brain and not really paying attention, and then she keys into the fabric itself, and it's the same fabric that was on the fire for the tires. So
yeah,
so it's clear that he started the fire.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have to figure out, did he do it? Did he know he was doing it when he did it? Like, has he been brainwashed? Because we've talked about whether or not he might be brainwashed from the Dama.
Right.
So has he been brainwashed?
The Dama has some kind of weird control over him, but I actually, looking at your notes, I want to know, do you think he was Brian washed?
I mean, it's possible he was Brian.
It's possible,
washed.
Yeah. No, yeah. But yeah, in all seriousness, yeah. I mean, remember, he has all the weird drawings, and he last year when he got back, when Maggie and he finally got back, he's like looking at him and smiling and acting all weird, and the way the Dama was talking about how she cut off his toe and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm wondering, clearly I'm not sure where they're going to go with it. Are they going to say that he's, been brainwashed, or maybe it's like Stockholm syndrome or something, where just being, in close, proximity to your captor, to your kidnapper, you develop like sympathy towards them, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, but I mean, obviously with the blue material, they're definitely saying that he set the signal fire.
Of course, yeah.
So yeah, I'm not sure. What do you think? You think they're gonna have him go full blown brainwashing, or?
I don't know. I do think it's interesting to toy with the idea of Herschel being bad, because in the comic books, he is not. When he grows up, he's not a likable character. He's almost you would say an enemy of the Commonwealth. He is not endearing, let's put it that way.
Right.
So to try and toy with the idea of Herschel being an unlikable character outside of the petulant teenager bullshit, if you made him do bad things, work against Maggie in some way, that would be interesting. So I don't know. Does the brainwashing get you there? Or did the Dama tap into something like he has a lot of resentment and bad feelings towards Maggie for lots of emotional reasons, but could the Dama have exploited those and gotten him on her side? Not by brainwashing, but by manipulating him, manipulating his feelings that are actually there, you know? I don't know. But I do like the wrinkle. I like the wrinkle that he's the one that set the fire, but I'm just curious to see if they stick the landing on explaining how he came to do that. You know, what was his motivation? Did he even have a motivation? Was he aware of what he was doing? You know, so we'll have to see how they handle that. But I think it's possible. I think it's really possible they could go down the brainwashed route for sure.
Well, yeah, it's got to be something, right? Because you'd think that like the last place you would want to go back to is New York and the captivity thing, but he seems super eager.
Well, he's also, I keep thinking about that image where he was really centering on, like, it was one of the last pictures he looked at in last episode, was sort of this look at the city as it was, like the buildings and the bigness and the grandeur of it, etc. And he seemed really taken with that and liked that image and liked how it made him feel. So, is it just a case of like, oh, this is amazing. This, New York is amazing and I want to be a part of it. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very weird. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what they do. Yeah. And then the other final revelation at the end of the episode, as they start heading into what Maggie says is a park, which I mean, clearly it's Central Park, but
it is the park.
Yeah, it is, right? And,
yeah.
And we had seen in last week's episode, Navarez has like this like really slick 45 automatic pistol with like pearl grips, I mean, it's like a real ornate looking gun. And when she survives the boat sinking, and we should point out that the governor's probably dead, right?
Yeah,
she looked like she blew up. She was out on the deck there when
and she took a direct hit from like the second spray of very well aimed Walker cannons,
ghoul shells or whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
And and then General Houseman, he gets blown off the back of the boat, right? So he's most likely dead. And so now you have Navarez and then Pearlie are like the two senior officers are left. And then what would you say there are like maybe like 10 soldier people that are with them? And then you have Maggie and Herschel and Ginny. Those are like, that's everybody that survived the boat that we know of. Maybe there are others that we'll run into, like maybe the governor will show up or whatever later on. But anyway, when like they're sitting there and the ghouls like start approaching on them, Navarez like goes to draw a pistol and her holster's empty.
Yeah.
Right. And she kind of is like, oh crap, I don't have my gun. And so at the very end of the episode, after Maggie like sees Herschel's blue fabric and makes the connection and, has that very uncomfortable, come sit next to me, son, I love you, even though you're a traitor, moment. The very last thing we get is Ginny goes up and starts like going through like her pack. And she moves some stuff, and in the bottom of it, she has Navarez's gun.
Yep. Good
so
for her.
We'll have to see it. Is she saving that for Negan? Because Negan killed her dad, or what is that going to be? But yeah, that was kind of the end, and then they decide to go into the park, and so that's where they're going to hold up.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like I like the revelation of the fabric, and I like that they didn't just show it to us, but they let Maggie make the realization too, because you and I have both discussed, I hate when there's evidence of something right there and either someone doesn't see it or it doesn't get explained, but the whole point of that scene was for Maggie to see it. So Maggie understands that that's the same fabric. She's not stupid. She makes the connection. You can see physically she makes the connection. And what will she do with that information is the question answer in the next episode. But the rest of it, like going into Central Park, I think will be interesting because it's a wilderness in the middle of a big city. So it'll be interesting to see how that is, works for them. And the Ginny with Navarez's gun is kind of like, it's clear that Ginny is only there because she's on some type of revenge mission. She either wants to kill Negan or she wants to, teach him a lesson or something. You know what I mean? So that's just, whatever. It is what it is. Ugh.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything that we didn't get to on our lists of doom that we would like to make sure that we talk about before we take our break?
I don't think so. I mean, like I said, this was not one of my favorite episodes of the show. So
yeah, unfortunately, I'm taking a look through mine and I think, yeah.
You know what? I would just point out we had 0 Kim Coates this week, which is always a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, they mentioned it by name. He's the one that gave her the Goya painting, so I find that interesting. And we did get the one tidbit. I think it's interesting that they got one of the like clans or other outside
one
groups
of the gangs,
is helping them, but both Christos, who's the guy that was shocked by by Lucille, and Bruegel have not agreed yet. And so that's interesting that that's still sort of out there. It felt like they were gonna come around based on Bruegel and his reaction to the neon lights, and also Christos being like sort of knocked unconscious by Negan. It felt like that was like the natural next step, but it's interesting to know that that's not what happened. So we'll have to see how that plays out in the next episode as well. And yes, please, that's probably what made this episode bad, was that there was no Kim Coates in it. Damn it.
There you
go. Get it together, people. All right, so that's gonna be it for just our points for the episode. We're gonna go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna discuss our listener feedback and what's coming up on the podcast.
So please, everyone, just stick around a little while longer because we'll be right back.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally gonna get in. You better get ready for it.
No! Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head.
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a horror apocalypse entertainment podcast. Join hosts Diana and Steve as they recap and discuss the best of horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and apocalyptic entertainment. Aim for the Head, available wherever you listen to podcasts. Find us on Instagram and Blue Sky.
Hey there, this is Greg Nicotero, and you're listening to Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots, they really just don't work.
Hey there, everybody. We are back. We're going to jump right into the feedback we received for this episode, and then we'll get into what's coming up next on the podcast. So, Steve, why don't you take it away with our feedback we got for this episode?
Wow, certainly. We received one piece of feedback for this episode. We got uno feedbacko, but it is from our P1 listener, Ms. Erica Price.
Love it.
Hello, Erica. And she sent this via the Facebook, and she says, and she has in parentheses saying, I'm going to follow your advice and watch this before The Last of Us. Good Yeah, job on your part,
Yep.
Erica, because this will be much more enjoyable. Because if you'd done it the other way, you would have been like, "Oh my God."
Yeah, tearing your hair out.
She starts out by saying, if Maggie has intimate knowledge of the actions and movements of the Croat and associates, why not get her input on their plans? Sounds like something you said earlier in the episode. Why shoo her away like she's irrelevant? Yes, that is also a good point. So who set the pile of tires on fire? I missed that. Well, you'll find out here, and she does in a little bit.
Yeah.
But what exactly did Maggie think was going to be accomplished by ringing Navarra's bell?
Yeah.
Well, remember, Navarra's had basically said that, they're going to lock her in the ship and Herschel. And, Maggie was really dead set on not taking Herschel on this little excursion.
Correct.
And I think that was what spurred her into, well, I'm going to punch you in the face now.
Yes, it's time to hit you.
Yeah. And hitting shall begin.
Yeah.
She goes on to say, oh, Herschel started the fire. What a dumbass. Well, we have to see why. We were just talking about that. Is he like, like a deep agent that they've created, with the brainwashing? Is he a Stockholm Syndrome victim and just wants to get back to New York?
Right.
We don't know. But clearly he set the fire for some reason that has yet to be revealed. So we'll see.
Yeah.
And then she goes on to say, so they've been planning this invasion for months. They get sidetracked by explosions and very well aimed walker bombs, and she has kind of the like rolling your eyes emoji, like, oh my God, seriously.
Right.
And then she goes, finally they make it to land, and it's like they have no clue what to do. Brilliant.
Yeah.
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 The more you think about it, like, why would you like send this little group in first? I mean, other than what Maggie said, it's just cannon fodder to like kind of like, we're going to send this little group in and see what they do, what the other guys do.
Right.
How do they respond to this? Are they just going to wipe them out? How are they going to wipe them out so we can kind of test what their reaction is? But yeah, it makes no sense. It absolutely doesn't. But
yeah.
Anyway, Erica, thank you so much for your feedback. We always love it when you write in.
Yeah.
And like you said, now you get to, hopefully after you watch this, you got to watch The Last of Us, and we'll see your feedback for that tomorrow.
Yeah. Let's hope so. Yeah. It's funny because we were talking about how this whole sequence, this whole episode was sort of a way to sort of push the New Babylon people aside and put Maggie in charge. And as soon as they hit the beach, like Erica was saying, they planned this invasion, or this, they called it, I'm using air quotes, exploratory mission, for months. And they get to the shore and they're like, oh, now what do we do? And
I don't know.
And they're like, there's a handful of walkers coming towards them. And Maggie is the one that springs into action and is like, there's too many of them. Let's get moving. And I'm like, are there too many of them? Yeah, whatever. Because there was like 10 of them.
I thought so. I'm like, really? They could wipe those guys out if they wanted to, but then also you're right though. The same point when they're like the next morning when they're like just like sitting there in the road, which I thought was a little weird. I'm like, really? You're not going to find any cover in like a building or anything, but okay. And they're there. And then she's the one that's like, there's a park over there. It's overgrown. We can go in there and the Croats men won't be able to find us. We can wait till it gets dark and then we can kind of move around and try and figure out what we're going to do. And they're like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, clearly she is asserting her, her leadership and taking over the group. So,
yeah. They didn't listen to her expertise in the beginning, but now they're going to have to listen to her expertise now that they're kind of screwed. So.
Yeah.
All right. So next week, we will be covering episode 3. Episode 3's title, Why Did the Mainlanders Cross the River? Why did they cross the river, Steve?
To get to the other side.
All right. Yeah, that's basically it. That's all they had to do.
They were stapled to the chicken. One or the other.
Either way. Either answer would have that is correct. So, We don't have a description of the episode yet, but I imagine that it's someone telling chicken crossing the road jokes over and over and over again to the historian Benjamin Pierce dude, and he just sits there going, "What's a chicken?" So that's just what I picture for next week's episode, and we'll have to see if that's what happens, because they haven't let us know what it's going to be, so we just got to imagine what kind of craziness will be thought up in their heads. Yeah.
All right,
just a little note for everybody to know. Our pal, Lauren Cohen, is directing episodes 4 and 6 of the series. So earlier when you were talking about whether or not Satcher Zemas will be directing all of the episodes, maybe, but all of them except these 2. So not next week, but the week after the Maggie episodes start. Lauren Cohen episodes start. And we did have to change up our schedule slightly this week and record Dead City on Monday, and then tomorrow we'll be recording for The Last of Us. Just structurally, we're busy both Wednesday and Thursday night, so we had to sort of compress it into Monday, Tuesday. But we will return to your regularly scheduled program next week, and we'll go back to doing The Last of Us on Tuesday, and then we will cover Dead City on Wednesday night. So we'll obviously have socials out there and be looking for feedback, but you'll have a little bit longer to let us know what you thought about Dead City, and the same amount of time for The Last of Us. We'll just record in opposite order next week. Again, back to normal. So yeah. Anything else we should discuss before we wrap this up?
Just that we are 2 days away from Fury Road.
So excited. So excited.
I know.
Yeah.
It's going to be so great.
We both got special t-shirts because that's the kind of nerds we are. And
absolutely.
And I specifically took my t-shirt out and hung it on a hanger, and I have it like facing me so that every time I open my closet, it's right in front of my face and I'm looking at the design so that I do not forget to put it on, because I'm going to leave directly from work to go to this showing.
Yeah.
So
I believe you also want me to like send you like a text reminder
no,
on Wednesday.
No, I'll be fine.
Like, don't forget the shirt.
I'll be fine. So I either need to wear it or stick it in my bag to change into it at work. Either way, whatever I decide to do. But I have it staring me in the face so that every time I go into my closet, I'll be like, oh, t-shirt, must wear that. Must bring that.
Must wear.
Yes.
Yep.
Have to have it.
Please do, because I've heard so much about it. I want to see it.
Yeah,
So.
I've talked it up so much that I hope it doesn't let down, just because, whatever.
No.
But we've been mentioning this show for quite a few weeks now. I've got links in the show notes on where to go to get tickets. It's showing at the Lakes Theater in Oak Park. We're gonna have a ball. And I can't wait until next week's episodes when we can talk about what kind of time we had at the show. So we're pretty excited about this one. Gonna be good times, people. Good times.
It's gonna be great.
All right. So nothing else to discuss? I don't think so.
I think we're done.
Oh, good. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up, folks. We look forward to chatting with you next week when we discuss episode 3 of Dead City. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
'Cause the body shots, they know a worka.
To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
See, now you should do the whole podcast in that voice. That would be awesome. First image, I love the bird's nest in the skull ghoul, but then it's paired with the newest looking Jeeps and cars. Yeah!
Could our listeners listen to that for 2 hours?
I bet they could.